everyone. I'm David from Winning Solutions, and today we're going to do a little bit of a demonstration on front-end and back-end databases. So you may have heard the term split database or front-end, back-end, and may be wondering, what does that entail exactly? And what is the reason why we might want to split a database? Well, right now, over here, I have a very simple database set up. A very basic form where you have customers here and you have a subform with order number, order date, and order amounts. And so right now, everything is in this one database file. So we have a file here called, I think SplitDB is the name of it. So it's right here, split. This file, by the way, this is LACCDB. That's not the database. That's a temporary record lock, that file that Access opens when you have the database open, and it closes, or at least it should, when the database is closed. But right now, everything is in one package. So you got two tables here. You got a table for orders, and you got a table for people or customers. So let's shut this in here so we can see it. Okay, so what we're going to do, we're going to go through the process of splitting a database, because let's take the following scenario. Now, you may have several employees who enter orders and enter customers and things like that. But the way this is set up right now, this can only be used on one computer. Because the data, if you take this and copy it to other computers, and every computer has its own copy of the data, and you don't want that, right? You want the data to be in one location, but you also don't want everyone to be hitting the same file. So what we see sometimes is we'll see some clients who take a database like this and they'll put it on a network location so that everyone can access it, and then everyone's accessing the same data and the same interface, the same forms. Well, that's not so great either, because you don't want to be sharing. You want to share the data, but you don't want to share the forms. So that you have everyone accessing the same front end, then that kind of defeats the purpose. And what do I mean by front end? Let's kind of get into, not get ahead of ourselves here. This is the front end. This form here, we talk about the front end, we're talking about the user interface. So we're talking about the forms, the reports, any macros that are running, even any queries that we run off this database. That's all the front end. What is the back end? Well, the back end is this. Well, there's actually, technically there is no back end right now, since everything's in the same database. But when people refer to the back end, they're generally referring to tables, the raw data itself. So what we want, ideally, is we want a situation where users access the same data, but they have their own copy of the interface. So we want to split the database into separate front end and back ends, so that we can have the data in a central location, a network drive, and everyone has their own copy of the front end on their hard drive that simply reaches out and talks to the data, so that you have that sharing going on without having to share an interface. So we're going to do that right now. So let's close all this up, and I think the best way to do this is, I'm going to close this, and I'm going to keep the original split. So I'm going to make a front end and a back end. Okay, and I'm just going to call this SplitDB front end. I'm going to call this SplitDB backend. Okay, so what we're going to do now, right now they're both identical, but what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into, let's go into the back end first. I mean, we can keep the form in the back end, but let's not do that. Let's have this, we're going to have this as data only. Okay, so we just have the data tables in there. Now let's open the front end, and we're going to do the opposite. We don't need to have the forms in the tables in here. So what I'm going to do is I'm actually going to delete the tables. Now, of course, if you do that, the data won't function, right? And you're going to get this if you have a split database and the front end can't find the back end tables. What we're going to do is we're going to connect the back end tables. We have the front end open here. We're going to connect the back end tables through linking. And again, you don't have to necessarily worry yourself about the technical ways that we're doing this. My purpose in this video is just to kind of give a brief tutorial of what a split database is, what a front end is, what a back end is, what the difference is, and why you would do that. So I'm going to go through this a little quickly. This is not meant to be an instructional video on how to do a split database. But what we're going to do here is we're going to go to external data, and I'm going to bring in a new data source from an Access database. But instead, so we can import, we can drag tables and forms and whatever right into this database. But what I'm going to do here is I'm going to say we're going to link to it. And so I'm going to browse for the backend that we just created. And so here's the backend. So I'm going to select SplitDB backend. And then you see now we have something that says linked tables. So I'm going to link both of these tables in here. Okay, so now you see the tables are still in there, and we can open the people form, and it functions just as before. But notice there's a slight difference. The tables have changed. The icon has changed. Now you got this little, hard to see, but you got this little arrow pointing to the table. Basically, what this means is that the tables are not in here. These are only links. Now you can think of it almost as a web page, right? These are hyperlinks. The web page is the back end, where all the pages and files and everything are stored. So what you have here is just a representation. It's a link to the back end that's done in the front end. And if we close this, close everything here, is to show you this is the original combined database. Now we have 544 kilobits. You're not going to see a huge size difference because the data tables are pretty small here. But you notice when we split the database, the front end goes from 544K down to 504K. That's because we're not storing the data with it. The data is actually in here. So the nice thing about this is you can take this, you can take the front end, and let's create another folder in here. It's called front end. We're going to take, so you could take this and copy it. And I'm just kind of simulating copying it to another computer. But you can open this, and you can still have the functioning form. So you can copy this to other computers. Now you have to make sure that every one of the individual users has access to this network drive. We pretending this is on a network drive now. So obviously you need to make sure all users have access to it, and make sure that their front end is connected. So but that can be automated too. So that's not something you necessarily need to do, but you need to but they do need to be connected. Now there is another advanced version. We could even take the back end and move it away from Access onto an enterprise solution like SQL Server. Microsoft SQL Server is, put it in layman's terms, it's a back end engine. So it's a server that runs on a separate computer that serves the back end. And this might be necessary when the database gets big, you have a lot of data, and Access has a limit, also a size limit of 2 gigabytes. So once you get close to 2 gigabytes, you're not going to have much of a choice. you're going to have to go over to SQL Server at that point. But the process is more complicated for splitting that database, but it's still basically the same general idea. So that's our tutorial. Again, so what we've done is we've taken a database with forms and tables, and we've split it into a front end that simply refers to the back end by links, so that now this front end can be copied by any computer that has access to this folder, to this supposedly network folder, and they can all run accessing the same data, so you don't get data inconsistencies, but they still have their own copy of the front end. So thank you for watching this tutorial. Please remember to like and subscribe to our channel for more tutorials and more free videos and more demonstrations. So thank you again for watching, and have a great day.